Hello there again, David McFadden from the Dental Implant Center in Dallas, Texas. Today, I want to talk to you about this topic. Why are some dentists so much better than others? And I'm going to warn you ahead of time. If you watch this whole video, it's long. It's really long because the answer is not simple. I can give you bullet points like these. There's a few factors that go into why some dentists are so much better than others. And these are the main categories that we'll discuss throughout this video. But to summarize, you have to have a genetic gift to be able to use your hands. You have to be ambitious. You have to have ethics. You have to go through what's called deliberate practice. You have to be trying to get better every day, every procedure. And you have to have a little bit of luck. All of that produces excellence, not just in dentistry, but in many, if not all, fields. So that's it. That's the end of the video. If you'd like to stop now, that's the summary of what I'm going to tell you over the next, we don't even know how many minutes it's going to be, but it's going to be long. So this is the formula, and the rest of the presentation is going to talk about how we get to this bottom word, excellence. Genetic gifts, probably the most important part, and that's where we're going to start. So one of the things that plagues our industry, patients make false assumptions. They make false assumptions because we as dentists were smart enough to get into dental school, and we were somehow smart enough to get out of dental school and get our license. And the false assumption there is that that process produces excellent dentists, and it doesn't. So the first part of this presentation, I'm going to tell you the reasons why that's not true, and hopefully re-educate you on these assumptions. So all dentist skills are not created equally. Why is that? The first explanation that I want to share with you is the bell curve. What is the bell curve? It's something you may have been introduced to in high school, certainly in college statistics. It's a statistical theory put in practice. The first definition, the easy definition, at least in a number of words, is it's a normal distribution. And like you, that didn't mean anything to me when I first heard about the bell curve. So the actual definition is any task that can be measured and plotted on a graph creates a bell-shaped curve. A bell-shaped curve, where the center is the average, and any data point left of center is below average performance. Any data point right of center is above average performance. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. We all know about the 40-yard dash, right? You don't have to be a football fan to know that this is a grade school gym test that's administered to kids. You may have done it in grade school, junior high, high school. If you're an NFL player, you probably did it at the combine. But it's a test that we can all, most of us can do, how fast we can get from point A to point B over a 40-yard stretch. So here's the typical distribution called the bell curve of the general population over 40 yards. So what I'm proposing here may not be the actual numbers, but for demonstration purposes, I've basically said that 10 seconds, the average human being can cover 40 yards in 10 seconds. When we start to move left of the average, it may take some people 45 seconds to go 40 yards. So think of maybe an 80-year-old on a walker, or think of a small child just learning how to walk. So those people are going to be below average, maybe not their fault. There may be environmental factors or age factors related, but this is statistics. It doesn't care about those factors. So on this end, 3 standard deviations, 1, 2, 3. That's each one of these lines is called a standard deviation. And the further out you get, the faster these performers are. So 3 standard deviations right of the mean would be very fast. These would be your fastest people in high school track. These would be professional athletes, people like that. So if we took 10 people, I want to kind of show you how the data points start to appear on this graph. So if we took 10 people, random 10 people in the world or in the country or in your county or in your city, it doesn't matter. Take a random 10 people and test them, it will fall on a bell-shaped curve. The 10 may not be 10, it may turn out to be 12 or 13. So the numbers for the performance may change, but the distribution of the people being tested is going to stay roughly the same. So you're going to get a couple people slow, a couple people fast, but 68% of us are going to fall within 1 standard deviation right and left of the mean. Let's say we took 50 people. The same basic ratio still applies. 68% of the runners would end up in here, in and around 10 seconds. 14% on either side, 2 standard deviations outside the mean, and so on and so forth. If we took 100 people, this is what the distribution would look like. You'd still have 68% of the people falling within 1 standard deviation, 28% more within 2 standard deviations, and so on. So this is how the bell curve works in general. And we're going to go through a few more examples just to make sure you completely understand. So here's the interesting thing about the bell-shaped curve. If we took 100 NFL receivers who are notoriously fast, and we tested them in a 40-yard dash, their data points would still create a bell curve, where 68% of them would fall within 1 standard deviation of the mean, but their average time is going to be much faster than the random selection of the population of 100 people. So let's say their average 40-yard dash speed is 4.6. You'd have some of the slower guys at 4.8, and you'd have some of the really fast guys, really fast guys at 4.3, and maybe, I don't know, Tyreek Hill, I'm not sure who this would be out here, but you'd have outliers. And the whole premise of the bell curve is we're trying to find you dentists that are outliers. People whose performance ends up 3 or 4 or 5 standard deviations left of average. So I hope that helps you understand the bell curve. I'll give you a couple more examples here, because as the definition reads, any task that can be measured and plotted on a graph will create this same curve. So again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but vertical leap, we've probably all got tested for that in one school or another. So it's how high a person can jump from a standing start, and the same distribution happens. Shoe size, believe it or not, it's something that can be measured or tested that's plotted on a graph. And so we've got, I don't know, US males, average size 8.5, big feet, small feet, and everything in between. So that's kind of my first part of this presentation, just to talk about the bell-shaped curve and how it's genetic. Almost everything that we talked about here is genetic. Those NFL receivers didn't practice harder than you and me and learn how to run 4.3 or 4.5 40-yard dashes. They were born with this ability, and they improved it through practice. But how does it apply to dentistry is really the topic here, right? We're not talking about the NFL, we're talking about dental outcomes. So fine motor skills like running and jumping and shoe size, let's talk about the definition first. The ability to manipulate small objects with fingers, hands, and wrists. You remember this game from the 60s and 70s? It's called Operation. It's called a skill game, right? And we all remember playing it. So the idea here was, this was an electric board with metal outlines around these little body parts. And you had to go in with a pair of tweezers, metal tweezers, and if you hit the metal anywhere, the buzzer went off and you failed that operation. So, believe it or not, the ability to use your hands like this is genetic. And if we measured the game Operation with 100 people, how many times they made the buzzer go off or didn't, you'd find the same standard deviation as NFL players running a 40-yard dash or any of us leaping. So artwork is a really good example. Sculpting is a really good example of fine motor skills. So the name of this piece is The Veiled Virgin, and the artist who did this, you can imagine the detail and the precision and the overall skill level to be able to make a sculpture where these veils are a part of the same block of granite that the face is made from and the hair is made from. But yet somehow he was able to put this translucent appearance to a veil that is simply white granite. It's unbelievable. But again, maybe some of you believe that this artist just tried harder than his colleagues. But the truth is, this artist was born with fine motor skills that were so amazing that this probably came easy for him. Statue of David. You know, it's been reputed over the centuries as, how did Michelangelo get the perfect proportions out of a block of granite? It's mind-boggling. So let's use another example of fine motor skills, one that more of us can relate to. I'm going to give each one of you a bar of soap, and I'm going to give you little carving tools that we use in dentistry. And I'm going to ask you to sculpt a 3-inch version of the Statue of David. And you can even look at the statue while you're doing it. We're going to present this to a panel of judges who's going to measure your skill level on how much your 3-inch sculpture looks like the Statue of David. So down here, 3 standard deviations away from average, you're going to have sculptures that don't look like anything. Just blobs of soap that have been mutilated. In the middle, for 1 standard deviation either way, all of our sculptures in that range, we're going to probably be able to tell they look like a human being, or at least like a mammal of some sort, but not really going to see much detail. But there's going to be a few of us, a few of you, who can sculpt a statue of David that everybody could recognize as the Statue of David. And don't for a minute think that your ability was because maybe you learned some weird craft that made you better. That only helps a little bit. You know, trying harder only helps a little bit, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the people down here, born with that ability. So this is how the standard distribution of 100 of you and I would look like if we tried to carve a 3-inch Statue of David. Probably not surprising, right? But here's what the surprise is. If we took, this is the total population, 100 people randomly selected out of the total population. What if we took 100 dentists, gave them that same bar of soap, and asked them to do the 3-inch Statue of David? They would fall in the same bell-shaped curve as the average population. Same scores, between 1 and 10, 68% of them, something that resembles a human being. But everybody on this side mutilates the bar of soap just like you did. And of course, there'll be people out here where they have a beautiful result. But that's the surprising part, is that the average dentist has no better fine motor skills than you do. And if you don't believe me, here's one that might even strike closer to home. Handwriting, legibility. We all knew our classmates in grade school who had beautiful handwriting, and the rest of us didn't. That wasn't because that one person or two people in the class tried harder. It's because they were born with better handwriting. And the reason I think this is such a good example, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you in handwriting legibility. Sit down and just make your normal signature. Then you can look at it, maybe be as introspective as possible. Determine how legible it is, or even how pretty it is. Then the challenge is, I want you to slow down as much as you need to, and concentrate as much as you can. Try to improve your handwriting. All of us will improve a little bit, but probably only 10 to 20% will your signature improve, no matter how hard you try. That's genetic predisposition. That's how it works. You're born with a certain level. You can only improve that a small percent, no matter how hard you try, no matter how slowly you go. So the signature thing, I want you to think about that for a minute. I've got friends who sign their signatures and it looks like calligraphy. I've got people that sign their signatures and it's just a line because they can't print or write at all. So we talk about genetic predisposition, and I think Michael Jordan is a fantastic example to use to demonstrate what I mean here. No matter how hard I practice, I'm never going to be able to have a vertical leap of 40 inches, right? Michael was born with that ability. He worked really hard. By all accounts, he was tireless, and he pursued excellence as hard as anybody in the sport. But Michael Jordan was born with certain genetic abilities that even most NBA players aren't born with. So that's the point I'm getting at. There's another factor involved on why some dentists are so much better than others. It's a weird characteristic that you may not have ever thought of before. It's called spatial relations, spatial awareness, or spatial ability. And the definition is a person's capacity to virtually manipulate 2D and 3D objects, spot patterns between shapes, and to visualize movements and changes in those shapes. So this is connected to fine motor skills, but it's a virtual quality. It's something you can look at something in your brain and manipulate it. Henry Ford is a good example of that. For those of you who know any history about Henry Ford, he was an absolute mechanical genius. He got the idea of a carburetor before one was even invented. And he put parts and pieces together in his kitchen and invented the carburetor in his kitchen because of something that he imagined. Some of that's creativity, but it's also spatial relations. So a little bit easier way to understand that. Spatial relations testing. So this is a common question on a spatial relations test. Here is a two-dimensional picture, and the question is, if you folded that into a cube, which one of these would this picture become? So you can pause your video here for just a little bit and see how long it takes you, if you can even figure it out, which one of these cubes on the right would be the image on the left folded. So I'll give you a minute, or you can pause here. So if you pause your video, welcome back. And if not, the correct answer is this one. And how fast you arrived at that is an indicator of your spatial relations acuity. Again, it's a genetic predisposition. We're born with these abilities or we're not. We can study and practice and get better, 10 to 20%, but this is a genetic gift. So just that test alone, it might take the average person 90 seconds to figure out what that cube is going to look like folded. Some people it may take 15 minutes, some people it may take 5 seconds. But again, all of those results fall on a bell-shaped curve. What if I told you that dentists were no different than the general population? Give the same dentist the same test, it's going to have the same results. So again, I'm trying to break this myth of the false assumptions that because we made it through dental school, that somehow we are naturally good at dentistry, or that dental school taught us how to be good at dentistry. It's not the case. So I'll go back to my very first question, very first slide. Why are some dentists so much better than others? So for this first part of the presentation, it's their ability to combine spatial relations with fine motor skills at a very high level of precision. And this is what explains why some dentists are so much better than others. Probably not what you thought, really. So let's take it back one step even further. How do dental schools let us become students? Up until about 40 years ago, we were tested for IQ, spatial relations acuity, and fine motor skills. So we were actually vetted, if you will. We were trying to select the best people for the profession. I always think of military snipers, right? So as you come up through the military and you're tested at how often you can hit the bullseye of a target, you're never going to get a sniper at the highest levels of the military that couldn't hit the target, right? So they're going to test every level along the way until they find the guys who can hit the bullseye at 1,000 yards away. Never are you going to get the guy who can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards away becoming the sniper, because it's too important of a job, right, to attain that level. But in many of our professions now, we're dumbing everything down to the point where you can become, what's the saying? You can become whatever you dream. Well, that's not true. You can't. I couldn't play in the NBA, even though that might have been my dream, 40 years ago. It just doesn't work that way, except in some professions where there's other variables and factors involved. So sadly, and I say very sadly, the only consideration made by dental school admission offices today is your IQ and your ability to take tests and get high test scores. And in the last 50 years, there's been another variable introduced that I won't go into. But imagine we're only taking the smartest people. Has nothing to do with their fine motor skills, nothing to do with their spatial relations acuity. Just taking smart people into dental school and somehow hoping they're also going to be good with their hands. It's a recipe for disaster. In fact, I will tell you, I've made this joke before. I know, not that I know because I have a hairstylist, but I know hairstylists that would make far superior dentists than the people that are out there practicing dentistry. So, just to reiterate, there are no tests administered in dental school, the application process, that test the two most important things in dentistry, with fine motor skills being probably the most important. No test for it. So, what does make a great dentist? Well, it's the same thing that makes a great brain surgeon, a great artist, a great sculptor, a great mechanic, a great plumber. I know that may sound like a stretch to you, but there are differences in all of those trades. And those are the people that exist on the far right side of the bell curve and have both excellent fine motor skills and spatial relations acuity. They were born with it, but they also continually endeavor to improve those skills. That's who you're looking for in all of those things I mentioned and more. I don't care whether it's a roofer, a mechanic. This is the person you're looking for. The ones that existed way over here on the bell curve. Finding them is a challenge, and I'm going to help you with that at the very end of the presentation. So that's my end of part 2. And if you still haven't fallen asleep or clicked to the next video, we'll continue down this path. So there are other factors involved in why some dentists are so much better than others. So I'm going to call this part 2. It may feel like part 10, I'm not sure, but part 2, ethics and practice. So let's talk about those. First, let's define ethics. Moral principles that govern a person's behavior. Pretty simple, right? But the real question is, how do ethics or lack of ethics influence or affect dental outcomes? So ethics affects dental outcomes in 2 ways. Adversely affects dental outcomes in 2 ways. Speed and greed. That'll be easy to remember. So let's first talk about speed and how it influences quality in general. So let's take Toyota Motors as an example. You know, the most successful, most popular, arguably the most reliable cars in the world. So they're on a production line that Henry Ford invented, by the way. Monday, they produced 2,000 cars. The boss comes in on Tuesday and says, hey, starting tomorrow, we're going to produce 4,000 cars a day instead of 2,000. So Wednesday morning, everything's geared up. They produce 4,000 cars instead of 2,000 cars on that same production line in one day, one work day. What do you think is going to happen to quality? I mean, it's not even debatable. Quality is going to decline. It's going to decrease. And eventually, with enough people having problems with their new cars, Toyota's reputation is going to take a hit. They're a worldwide entity. Their cars are sold worldwide. So many people have them that you can actually lose reputation points. Dentistry is a little different. So we double the production in dentistry, quality goes down. Thanks to online reviews, some of the lower quality dentists are being called out. But dentistry is a very intimate profession. And word like, you know, Toyota's changes don't get out as easily, especially in big cities. There's always the next patient to replace the one that leaves. So it's a little bit harder to get real data in dental offices. But suffice it to say, the faster you go, the worse quality outcomes, the more adversely affected are the outcomes. And then we have greed. You know, we've all taken our car into the shop. We've been told we need thousands of dollars worth of work. And if you're ever willing to go get a second opinion, you may find out that half of that stuff, maybe all of that stuff, wasn't necessary, that your car was working fine in those departments, but the mechanic was greedy, so he wanted more of your money. So how does greed, speed, and dentistry come together just let's take an individual example. A single crown. So crowns are a prosthetic device that go over the top of a tooth, supposedly to reinforce that tooth. Sometimes they're called caps. But let's say that you're finished with your cleaning. You're either told by the hygienist or the dentist who comes in to do your exam that you need a crown. Maybe you only needed a small filling, and maybe you needed nothing at all. I do many second opinions on patients who got these wild treatment plans that they couldn't imagine, and it turns out that some or all of the work was unnecessary. So first of all, you have an unnecessary procedure. That's greed. Secondarily, that same dentist may perform the procedure as fast as humanly possible. That's speed. And then in order to make even more profit, they're going to send the impression to a lab for the cheapest price. Or they're going to mill the crown in their own office to save even more money. So the cheapest lab, that's back to greed again. So speed and greed really do come into play in these professions that take skill and precision and time to do well. So you can stop there, if you're bored, but there's more to the story. So part 3, I want to talk about how someone becomes an expert at something. This idea of 10,000 hours to expert status was introduced to me by Malcolm Gladwell in his book called Outliers. Fantastic book. I recommend everybody read it. It's so insightful, so well written, and so easy to read that I think anybody would enjoy it. But in this book, he introduced me to the concept that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something, which I kind of went back over my career and thought, you know, I can see where that would be the case. But then as I pondered the idea more and more, I got to thinking, almost all of the people in dentistry that are 35 years of age and older, all of us have 10,000 hours. So then I started thinking a little bit more about it. So let's talk about the concept. Anders Ericsson at the University of Colorado came up with this theory about the paper was called The Role of Deliberate Practice in the Acquisition of Expert Performance, done in 1993. But what I want to point out here is probably lost on you in the first introduction or the first read of this sentence. These two words, deliberate practice. And this is why I was struggling so much with Malcolm Gladwell's theory based on this study about 10,000 hours. I was like, that can't be the only factor involved. And sure enough, the original paper outlined the difference, and that's deliberate practice. Gladwell, in his book Outliers, he uses musicians, professional musicians, as his example of 10,000 hours. And this I do agree with. If you're a musician that was born with a pretty good musical gift at your particular instrument, or many instruments, you're on a path to become a professional. So there's no faking it. You're practicing every day. You're trying harder pieces every day. You're going to recitals where you're being judged by your peers or by other experts in the field on how well you played that piece. So 10,000 hours for a professional musician makes sense because you're trying to get better every single day. And that's where the deliberate practice comes in. So again, we'll go back to dentistry. How does the practice of dentistry change that formula? And I'll go back to his own words. Deliberate or purposeful practice. Most dentists are not practicing deliberately or purposefully, nor are they trying to get better every day with every procedure. So just statistically, I think this is funny. I'll share this with you. The bell curve shows us that 50% of people in any measured task are going to fall below average, which you've maybe heard this funny quote before, 50% of doctors finish in the bottom half of their class. And it's just a funny way to describe that we're not all the same. So to sum it up for you, when a person with a genetic gift is ambitious enough to improve that gift through diligent, purposeful practice, excellence is inevitable. And that's the whole premise, I would say, that where Malcolm Gladwell's introduction of that concept to me, it got me thinking that unless you're being tested by other experts or you're being scored along the way, most people are going to take the path of least resistance and just do something faster or for profit. They're not going to be trying to get better every day. Everybody on earth knows Tiger Woods, right? So I'll introduce the final concept to you here, and that is luck. Tiger, arguably, either he or Jack Nicklaus are the greatest of all time, right? The GOAT of golf. I've never been a Tiger fan, but I believe Tiger is the greatest golfer of all time because the field of competition that he competed against was massive compared to the field that Jack competed against. On any given Sunday, 100 golfers could win during Tiger's era. Today, that might be 250 golfers could win on any given Sunday. Back in Jack's time, maybe 10 to 20 golfers could win. So that's why I think Tiger's probably the greatest of all time. But back to luck. What I want to point out here is that if Tiger never had a golf club in his hand, never got introduced to golf by his father, he would have this genetic gift that was unrealized. So dentistry, again, I'll go back. Dentistry, to get into dental school takes a little bit of luck. There's variables now that are not fair for everybody. And if we're only basing it on IQ, we're only going to be taking the smartest people, not the ones with the best hands. So luck has a lot to do with the formula as well. And I would just go back, one more little funny aside is that Jack is credited with this quote that says, "The harder I practice, the luckier I get," which again is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek quote, humorous quote, meaning that if you're out there hitting golf balls for 8 hours a day, and you get lucky on Sunday to win the tournament, it wasn't really luck, but it was the practice that did the trick. So if we look at major championships won by golfers, we've got Jack and Tiger right here. And those are the dentists and the implant doctors that you're looking for. Way out here on this end of the spectrum. Hard to find. So again, I'll go back to the original second slide. Genetic gifts, ambition, ethics, deliberate practice, and luck create excellence. And one of the reasons this topic is so passionate to me that I'd like to just mention before we finish is that things that came easily to me in my life, I thought it was because I was trying harder than my peers. I was always gifted athletically. So I always just thought, hey, I'm practicing basketball or swimming or whatever the sport was. I'm just practicing more than they are. But the truth is, I was born with a certain genetic predisposition to being good at the bigger, the motor skill sports. I think it's I'm not sure, but I think it's the limbic cortex that allows us coordination and fine coordination. Some people are just better at it than others. People are smarter than others. But when I said false assumptions early in the lecture, I wanted to clarify that at a personal level, I never understood this until I was much more mature, probably in my 30s or 40s, before I realized that there's things at play that we have no control over. And our genetic gifts are that. And hopefully, maybe if you can't jump 40 inches off the ground, you have 125 IQ. Right? We all have our own gifts, but the purpose of today's lecture was to not confuse that because a certain level of education has been obtained, that doesn't make us all equal. So I'll finish with reminding you that the genetic gifts are probably worth 80% of the rest of these. These you have to have. And if you've got enough of them, maybe you don't even have to have any of these other things because there are those rare athletes. I keep going back to athletics, but I could use Einstein as an example. He was born with an IQ that was so far off the charts, he never would have had to develop any of his theories or opinions about stuff, but he was born with that. None of us are going to get there. So while I've said repeatedly throughout this presentation that it's incredibly hard to find the doctor that exists way right of the average on our bell curve, but there are things you can do to help you be more confident that you found the best doctor that you could possibly find. It does take some legwork, and it does take some time, and it takes research. So here's my recommendation to try to find the doctor who will give you the best outcome. So online research makes it a lot easier than it used to be. So I would go to those doctors' websites and I would visit their gallery, and know that in these galleries, a lot of doctors buy the gallery from a third party. It's not their work they're showing. They're trying to lure more patients in by having a gallery that looks great, rather than it being a true representation of their skill set and their outcomes. You can find that out too. I mean, if the pictures are super clean, the resolution is insanely high, things just look too good to be true. As you've heard me say in my other videos, I've taken over 2 million pictures of my work in the last 33 years. And it's nice photography, but if it's over the top nice and it all kind of looks the same, it's probably a third party purchase. And what to look for in the gallery. I should mention that as well. Lips retracted. If you haven't seen my video on lips retracted dental photography, we'll put a link to that below. But if the doctor's not showing you what the outcome looks like with the lips out of the way and all they're doing is showing you a smile, they're hiding something. Secondarily, credentials. Credentials do matter. If you can find a bio page or a credentials page on their website, go and look at it. See how much education they've had. See how much CE they've taken or how much CE they've given. See how many board certifications they might have. Credentials do matter because, again, in that ambition part that was part of the formula to excellence, ambition it does help separate the good from the medium to the bad. Not always, it's not a perfect predictor, but it certainly is better than guessing. Reviews. We all know that reviews can be manipulated in various ways. But I think most of you are good enough with reviews that you can read a review and know whether it's genuine or not. And also know that some reviews can be purchased. Some bad reviews can be cleansed. If you're a consumer like me, I'm going to go and I'm going to first look at the bad reviews. All the 5-star reviews basically are the same, right? Dr. McFadden's great. He walks on water. Love him. Had dinner with him. Whatever. Those are all. They almost lose credibility because they're so glowing, right? So I go to the 1- and 2-star reviews to see if there's anything consistently wrong with the outcomes. That's just me as a consumer. And in dentistry, a lot of the bad reviews will fall off over time, or they can be purchased away. But anyway, at least it's another way to vet the doctor you're about to see. You should consider 3 doctors minimum, and just start doing pros and cons of each. Compare their galleries, compare their reviews, and start to get a scorecard, if you will, of at least 3 doctors. The other thing is you should be looking for specialists. If you're about to spend tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000 plus minus, that is a job for a specialist. And remember, cosmetic dentistry and implant dentistry are not true dental specialties. 3 dental specialties that actually train us to do dental implant treatment. General dentistry, implant dentistry, cosmetic dentistry, they are not true specialties, so don't be fooled. Then the in-person interview. When you do end up at a dental office, in front of the dentist that you might give your business to, trust your life to, get them to show you similar cases. Something that they've done that's close to what he's recommending for you. Everybody that I know that's on this end of the bell-shaped curve, 3 or 4 standard deviations right of the mean, every one of them takes pictures of what they do. If they don't, that's a red flag. Show me the outcomes with the lips retracted. If they don't show you those, they're hiding something. Still not convinced? Take your time and start your research over. This is so expensive, so invasive. and mostly non-reversible. You have to pick the right doctor. And even if the first 3 fail you, be tenacious. Stay with it until you find somebody you're comfortable with and that you can trust implicitly. And then if it takes you buying plane tickets to find the right person, buy plane tickets and stay in hotels. The travel expense of a few $1,000s versus a lifetime of botched implant dentistry, it's not worth it. You're going to be paying tens of thousands of dollars either way. And as long as we're on cost, be aware, be afraid, a buyer beware of discounted implant dentistry and discounted brain surgery. So if you have to travel, travel. Ask that office if they'll let you interview other patients by telephone. Now, of course, and it would be the same for me, we don't have any disgruntled patients that I can think of off the top of my head that we've done implant work for. But I'm going to give you the most happy, the most satisfied patients, and know that the other doctors are going to do that too, if they'll do it at all. If they're not willing to give you other patients' phone numbers, that's another red flag. And finally, this is a tough one. Me and my marketing friend Barbara always have this debate. Can you call other specialists in your area and ask them the question, I need full mouth implant treatment. Where would you go? Where would you send your loved ones to if you needed what I need? Whether that's full mouth implant treatment or single tooth implant treatment. It's all difficult. It's all complex. Great outcomes are not by luck. So if you hear a recurring name, I would say call endodontists, call orthodontists, call maybe periodontists, but periodontists do a lot of implant work, so you're maybe not going to get an unbiased answer from them. But I'd say endodontists might be the best specialty because they see the bad root canals that come in, but hopefully they also know a really good implant doctor in your area. Very few endodontists do implant treatment, so I think they're a credible source. And if you hear the same name come up once or twice, that's probably somebody you should consider. And I would tell you that the saying, it's a small world. Dental communities are small too. Everybody in town knows who the best doctors are, but their egos won't let them say their names, right? It's just, it's a very competitive arena that we practice in. And so there's a lot of bias like that, jealousy, pride, whatever it happens to be. But if you call a doctor's office that doesn't do implants, you ask them who the best person in town is, you might have somebody tell you the same, a couple different doctors tell you the same name, and that's where you could start your process. So those are my best recommendations on how to find somebody that's far right on the bell curve. And I know this has been super long. Some of you like my long ones, I'm not sure, but thank you so much for staying tuned in, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.